On January 12, 1876, Jack London was born in San Francisco. In 1893, he enlisted as a sailor on the Sophia Sutherland, and this experience will make him write his first real story, Typhoon on the Coast of Japan. Jack, however, is unable to make a living from writing and comes to hang out in the ghetto. In 1895, he enrolled in a college, but he left only after 6 months. In 1897, he tried the gold rush in the Klondike, Alaska, but even there he found no luck. Jack achieved success as a writer when he returned home and wrote An Odyssey of the North, a report of his journey in the Islands. At the beginning of the 20th century, he married Elizabeth Madden, from whom he will have 2 daughters, even if the love of his life will be only Charmianki Dredge, the woman that will accompany him throughout his life in his adventures until his death in 1916. It was in 1903 that he wrote The Call of the Wild, one of his greatest successes and one of his greatest creations. The Call of the Wild tells the story of Buck, a spoiled and proud dog raised in the Judge Miller's wealthy family in California. One day, Buck is sold as a sled dog to gold diggers, ready to leave for Alaska. Here, Buck will be subjected to enormous hardships by more or less evil men. He will discover what it means to fight for one's life, to bend to the will of man, and what nature really represents for him. Buck will give in to the call of that wild and mysterious nature, but not before feeling one last time some love for a human, John Thornton, and helping him on his personal journey. Buck will finally know freedom when life decides to take away the last shred of human bond that binds him to the rules of obedience of the society he had known until that moment.
Per 2 giorni e nel mio letto.
Take away from Jack London's novel some of its cruelty, add a little more romance, and the result is Chris Sanders' adaptation. In the film, some characters were cut off, such as Manuel, the gardener who betrays Buck and sells him to gold diggers, or the Scotsman, Buck's second master in the Islands. Instead, he maintains the fabula of the original text, even if with small changes, fitting well those details that in the book have a particular meaning, such as the man in the red shirt, the first hint of cruelty that tastes Buck, Buck's first time on the snow, or the fight that will see him the winner and leader of the sled dogs. Sanders gives more space to the character of John Thornton, who appears almost immediately, while in the book he arrives just before the end. He maintains the characters of Perrault and Francois, the first mashers who will guide Buck on his journey, but making them more good and human. It also keeps the 3 improvised gold diggers, who put at risk Buck's life and that of all the other sled dogs, making them, as in the book, unbearable and cruel. The end sees Buck finally integrate into nature, becoming the leader of the wolves, but if in the book it happens after a group of Indians, the Yeats, put an end to his adventure with Thornton by killing him, in the film this task will be up to one of the 3 gold diggers who wants to take revenge for the bad ending of his expedition. For sake of romance, in the film, Buck accompanies Thornton towards the end, giving the audience unique emotions. In the book, however, poor John dies alone, which triggers in Buck a blind rage and turns him into a beast capable of killing anyone who comes in front of him, which is not the case in the film. In Jack London's novel, although short, there are all the themes dear to the writer and to the American literature of those times. There is the figure of the hero that throughout the novel is represented by Buck, the journey, the adventure, and finally, the triumphant ending. The protagonist is the example of the confrontation between wild and civilized. In fact, throughout the story, Buck struggles against his principles, built during his life at Judge Miller's home, and against that primordial need to be free, to run in nature, to hunt and fight for survival. This is the conflict that also accompanies the writer throughout his life. Jack, in fact, is tied to the civilization because in order to live he needs money and therefore he needs to work. But he is also tied to the wild. Jack doesn't like to stay still. He needs to explore, to launch himself into adventure and to see the world. Another theme is slavery. In the novel, Buck fights and wins against all those who want him to be a slave and obedient dog. First, the man in the red shirt, who beats him every time he rebels. Then Spitz, the chief dog of the sled dogs, who want to subdue him. The three gold diggers, and paradoxically, also the love for Thornton, that keeps Buck tied to him and keeping him from the call of that nature that wants the dog part of itself. The novel's popularity is therefore not due to the plot, which is very simple, but to the writer's sinuous description and the opportunity to identify with the protagonist, even if it is a dog, that the novel gives to each of us. Jack describes Buck's life that is also a bit of his own. He describes the wild world of Alaska that is also a symbol of the cruel society of that time that can easily be found in ours as well, and which therefore makes the novel an evergreen. The Call of the Wild is one of those novels that, like all great classics, is too often classified as old and therefore worthy only of being replaced by newer fiction. My choice fell on it because after reading a very static plot book, I needed something more animated and to be transported into a new adventure. The Call of the Wild was promising, and the fact that it was a classic tickled the part of me that madly loves non-contemporary English literature. It was a perfect choice. Personally, I really like the novel. It is dynamic and never banal. Buck immediately entered into my heart, so much so that, halfway through the book, I was already rooting for him. In addition, the narrative is smooth, the plot is simple, and the landscapes described in the novel never take away the dynamic from the story, rather they seem to accompany and enrich it. There is no pause except when Buck has to face some of the challenges that come its way. The themes addressed are added to the story in a subtle way. They are always there on every page, just like the landscapes. The novel has its own balance that is broken and then recovered every time, leaving both Buck and his reader with an ever-changing self-awareness. The novel makes the reader enter this world and not leave it until the last page. I myself felt like I was an invisible companion to Buck as he makes his way through the world. It is exciting, fresh despite its age, and well written. It left me wanting to reread it 100 more times, as only a few books can do.